Good morning and welcome to this week's midweek meditation. Psalm 84 is what we're looking at today. Today is Wednesday, July 1st. Not sure how July happened, but here it is. So where do you feel God's presence? When and where throughout the day? Is there a certain place? Is there a certain time? When have you longed for God's presence? Not because God felt absence, but because of your love and desire to be in God's presence. What keeps you from experiencing God's presence? Again, not so much the absence of God idea, thinking that God is not near, but what keeps us from experiencing God's presence out of love, a desire to be in God's presence. What distractions do we need to clear away to truly experience God's presence throughout the day? Psalm 84 begins, "How lovely is your dwelling place, O Lord Almighty. My soul yearns for it, even faints for the courts of the Lord. My heart and my flesh cry out for the living God. Even the sparrow finds a home, and a swallow the nest for herself, where she may have her young, a place near the altar. Lord Almighty, my King and my God, blessed are those who dwell in your house. They are praising you forever. Blessed are those whose strength is in you, whose hearts are set on pilgrimage." Probably written for a musical team as a part of worship, this psalm expresses the yearning to be at the presence of God, which in the time that it was written was at the temple. David probably penned this psalm while absent from Jerusalem, fleeing for his life because his son Absalom had rebelled and David had to leave Jerusalem. So he was lamenting the absence of being near to God's presence in the temple. Now we've been separated, distanced from the sanctuary at Glendale United Methodist. Do we long to gather there again? Do we long to be in the presence of God there in that setting? Kind of a way to think about this psalm and its meaning. Do we come joyfully to church for worship when we do come, when we can come? Certainly there'll be joy when we gather back together. What about coming to the parking lot for parking lot church? Is there joy there? Is our intention to meet with God, to be in God's presence? That's the key to understanding. That's the key to finding joy and peace, longing for the presence of God, to be present with God in that time and place where we know, where we're comforted, where we have peace. That can be anywhere, but it should definitely be the sanctuary. An interesting line is verse 3, where the author is envious of the birds that make their home in the temple. Now, this was new for me because I never thought about the temple as being an open space, I guess, where birds could come inside and build anywhere in and around and on the temple. So it gives me a different picture of it, a different understanding of it. Are we envious of those? Are we envious of others? Do we seek to have in our life what we're envious of? God makes that possible for each and every one of us. So do we long to be in God's presence? The soul-satisfying joy of knowing God and being known by God. Not defined by a time and a place, but anywhere and any time. The pleasure that God gives to satisfy our souls should fuel our desire to be in His presence. Seeking to know who God is, believing that, realizing that God is mindful of me, looking at God's creation, looking to Jesus, the Son who died for me, looking to the gifts of faith and hope and love and salvation and peace promised to me? Do these things make me long for the presence of God? I asked the children a few weeks back, do you ever stop and just enjoy God? That's what the author is driving at. Not what God can do, not what we can ask God for, but do we just long to enjoy the presence of God, to know that love, and to know that peace? We should seek and desire to be in God's presence to overcome that which would keep us from being present with God and that which would keep us from God's house. In 1714, Matthew Henry, who wrote a great well-known commentary, was on his deathbed, and he said to one of his young students, you've been used to taking notice of the sayings of dying men. This is mine. A life spent in the service of God and communion with Him is the most comfortable and pleasant life that one can live in the present world. Matthew Henry, like all of us, had endured many things, but he found comfort and peace in God, with God, being present with God. So let it be our care to walk uprightly, to trust in God, for God to give us everything that is good for us, put our confidence in God and trust in God in and through all things. And when you can't go to the house of the Lord, when you can't go to the sanctuary to worship, go by faith to the Lord of the house and be happy and content. Find God in each moment and each place, today and every day. The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.